Hey guys, Infidel1258 here. Today we're going to get into a talking point that might be a bit conversational or problematic to some people because it's going to be looking at some unrealized, maybe some broken promises from the Splinterlands development team. And while I'm very excited about where Splinterlands is going, and even where it currently is, we have to be real about how things aren't perfect. And to me, we've seen recently some big names fall away from the game. It's not an accident. They felt either ignored or their concerns were sidelined, or the tokenomics have just collapsed in such a way that it's really taken away some of the reward potential in their minds. And so for whatever the reason, we've seen people leave. If we're not thoughtful about why that's happening, then we're ultimately not going to improve the situation. So that's why I want to talk about it today, with a specific fixation or focus around land. In the 6 years this game has existed, there's been so many directions and redirections. There's been plans and then those have been backburnered. Land has been 4 years in the making and it's not been fully realized. If we can go back to the official Splinterlands LAND presale and we see October 2020, the presale happening. And we're a month away from 4 years exactly. And we're not even close to this being a realized experience within the game. And so this is a piece I want to fixate on today. If that sounds interesting, I think we have something to learn with how this hasn't, what this has meant for our community, and what this means for the future success of this amazing blockchain-based video game. I think there's cause for concern wrapped in here, but I also think there's hope. Let's talk about it. So again, this was launched 4 years ago. And there was such success within this launch that the tracks and the regions sold rapidly. And there was early price points. I think it was $10 to start with. And they quickly ramped up to a whopping $15 per plot. Of course, those numbers were ridiculous. We look at the initial bonus, $10 per plot, $850 per track, $7,500 per region. Even on the lowest price point at this moment, like you can get a tract in that 8,000 range. And so there's been significant price appreciation. And one piece of, we have to admit is that this was financially, even now at its sort of where it's being ignored and maybe considered dead by some, there has been financial opportunity wrapped in this experience. You can't let that go. We have to remember that, even though the land experience itself is by no means complete and is an example of, I would argue, if not a failed promise, a failure to execute on promises made at this point. Now, there's those sentences might sound very similar, but you got to hear, one is it's done, it's dead, it's over, and some of you think that, and others will say and believe it's not been prioritized, it's not been focused, it's not been executed upon, but the future could still hold that. That's obviously where I land. But what we have to look clearly at, in my opinion, 4 major concerns with why this concept may be dead. Low player engagement. People talk about the land experience and they say that it's just simply not entertaining. I log in once a week and I click claim. That's not a game. And what's more, the rewards, I can only get grain or SPS or research. Research has no function, grain has no function except to be sold. And SPS, of course, you can get very little for significant cost. You'd rather just buy the SPS. People have covered things like if you go out and you buy a plot of land and equip it with the DEC necessary and buy the cards and equip it to make it produce, not to mention you need the grain in order to feed the workers. Looking at just the SPS production, you're nowhere near returning ROIing on that. It'd be simpler to just go spend that same money on SPS and just speculate on the future price appreciation. And so the financial opportunity and the game mechanic are not satisfying, not substantially rewarding. And that is a perspective that many will carry and most will probably even, I would say, agree with. People like myself have a longer term vision and say, if an SPS is worth 1 penny today or half a penny today, and I earn a couple hundred from, the reality is possible that those would be worth dollars later. And if that's possible, then you can multiply the earnings that were earned today, tomorrow, yesterday, and that retroactive raise can be calculated in to your planning. And the same is true, by the way, for Bitcoin mining. Sometimes people Bitcoin mine at a loss because they understand that Bitcoin goes down and up. They can operate at a loss for a period of time with that future price appreciation in mind. So it's not simply Splinterlands, it's not simply Dwayne. This is an approach to investment that other cryptocurrencies and even regular businesses will operate within. Not every business operates at full capacity or at full profitability all year round. Some are very seasonal. If your business sets up Christmas lights, you're not going to be very busy in June. And so, but yet those businesses exist. And so understanding that the same thoughts are possible within the context of what land is gives you a different vision for how, short-term losses might lead to long-term gains. You might say I'm being hopeful, but I'm saying first and foremost, we need to understand that the game mechanic of land at this moment is not particularly rewarding. Also, the financial aspect of what land is currently is not very satisfying in that it is not particularly lucrative. If we don't recognize those right out the gate, we are going to completely miss why people are not engaging enough within the land experience. These are probably the two primary concerns that people are going to bring to a resistance around land. So because of lack of engagement, because of lack of game mechanics, because of lack of financial reward, does that mean that land's never going to grow? No, because the game mechanics can be altered, the rewards can grow, they can even be modified. But low player engagement is absolutely a piece of why land is currently clearly not thriving. Low player engagement is a piece of that. Complexity and accessibility are another piece. I think accessibility, when we talk about even the Hive blockchain, or we talk about Splinterlands in particular, we've talked about how difficult it is. Recently, it was measured, there's 48 clicks to start the game, like literally to log in and play your first battle. 48 different screens. That's ridiculous. And they're making strong efforts to improve that as we move forward. And I think they will improve that because they understand that making it difficult for people to get into the game makes it difficult for them to spend money within the game or to become excited about the game. And so clearly, if we want player engagement, we think low player engagement is holding land back, is holding the game back. We got to recognize that accessibility within the land mechanic, it's not particularly complex, but again, there's the Hive barrier where do you understand Hive keychain? Do you understand, private, public posting, these different keys that are available within the Hive ecosystem? Do you understand SPS staking? Do you understand Hive staking because you need a certain amount of Hive in order to act on the blockchain? There's actually a great deal of complexity. Do you even understand how to move fiat currency into this ecosystem? It's not necessarily always easy. And so each of those represents a certain barrier that is a degree of complexity that's restricting accessibility. If we want to recognize, or if we want to, let's say, revive or breathe life into the projects around land or the future of what it might be and bring new players to this, we have to recognize that pulling down those barriers is going to be an important step in that process. A third factor as to why Splinterlands Land actually might be, at least at this moment, dead, would be from economic viability. We talked a moment ago about how the game mechanic isn't particularly satisfying because all you can really do is stake your cards and extract either grain, research, or SPS. And none of those in and of themselves provide any secondary or tertiary benefits or joy. It's not as if those then unlock some other game mechanic, at least not at this moment. All they're really doing is printing resources. There's inflation around grain, there's inflation around research. The number of units in the system is growing every day because of the farmers farming their land. And so there's no usefulness for them, at least in the short term. And there's no joy that comes out of having them. And then finally, there can be no significant financial short or medium term result from them because they have no functionality, they have no usefulness, they do not increase or expand your game mechanic or your gaming experience. And so you accrue and accrue and accrue, and all they do is the price goes down, the price goes down, the price goes down. We saw this with vouchers. We saw this with DC initially when there was DC points being attributed for the SPS airdrop. And so the point here is the economic model surrounding land is maybe not sustainable if we keep at this direction. In fact, I would say it's not going to be sustainable if we keep this up. We have to institute ways to spend grain. We have to institute ways to spend research. Otherwise, we're going to get to a place where vouchers are, it's the future of, it's what just happened with vouchers. We issued vouchers for validator node operation, for SPS staking, and all that did was 40,000 new vouchers every single day, led to an expansion of the voucher supply with a lack of utility and usefulness, and no increased gaming experience as a result of it, all of which led to stockpiles growing and growing and growing, which meant to a devaluation of the token. Inflation allows more tokens to move around chasing after the same number of goods. If there's not enough goods, the price of the currency will drop and drop and drop. That's what happened with vouchers. That's what's currently happening with grain. We don't necessarily know it because not everybody is farming, and not everybody who is farming is even trying to sell grain. But frankly, there's stockpiles of grain are growing into the millions. I have 9 or 10 million grain already, and I have like 20 plots of land. So if there's people with hundreds of plots or thousands of plots, grain is in abundance for those who are currently farming. Same is true for research, but maybe less so. And so the point is, if you give out these tokens to the point where everyone has all that they ever need, and maybe that's not so, you can, but if it is so, where you've given out too much of them, the token becomes worthless. And you might argue that in some future iteration of what Splinterlands LAND is, there'll be enough sinks that allow that tokenomics to work out, to find a new equilibrium. That's certainly possible. But the question still remains, at least in this moment, is where's the path forward in that? And if there is no path forward, or if it's not executed properly, it is fair to question whether or not the economic viability of land, because the payments being issued within it right now are just becoming inflated to the point of worthlessness. And then as you wrestle with the rewards being devalued and devalued and devalued because of inflation, you have to then also weigh that against the cost of setting up shop within land, to buy the plot of land, to hold the DEC, to put the cards into the land. It's a huge cost for a little reward. And so, is the model long-term viable? Not in its current iteration. Absolutely not. This is not long-term sustainable. This project will fail. Splinterlands LAND will fail unless the economic viability is altered. And it would happen, the alteration would happen some part through an application of utility within the tokenomics. Meaning, going back to point 1, the game mechanics need to be rethought, reimagined, broadened, so that there's more to do within the land experience, allowing more ways to spend your tokens, which would then allow those tokens to be erased, removed from people's wallets, maybe create new demand for it, and drive the income return opportunity, the economic model, to a more sustainable place. That's going to also drive player engagement because your game mechanics getting more enjoyable and the rewards are getting more substantial. And finally, for the fourth reason I've got for why the project actually might be dead is from technical issues. There's technical implications or challenges with executing what this has been already and what it's supposed to be in the future. We've heard, I think it was Investigator, they were talking about the complexity of launching items and spells. We know that one of the main reasons why people were excited about land was around items and spells. The ability to create these items, create these spells, they'd be single use. They would allow you to sell them into the marketplace for a certain profitability. The only way you could get them was either to mint them through your own land farming or to buy them off the marketplace. And that was part of the sexy, appeal of what land could be. We're nowhere near there. Based on current sort of estimations, that's maybe in 2025, which is like literally we're probably a full year away at minimum from that. We're 4 years from creation. We're talking minimum 5 years before we see that, probably another 2 years until we see that. So we're now 6 years, 5 to 6 years into the creation of, or the planning of land, the sale of land. And yet this main item that absolutely would improve the game mechanic, that would improve the reward, would attract new players, would improve the economic viability and sustainability of the ecosystem. It would improve many of these things. The barrier around items and spells, it's a technical issue. We heard with, like I said, Gator was talking about items and spells and how complicated it would be. What would it look like? We've seen tactics be dropped. These cards have already, in so many ways, stretched or even at times broken what the game is. When we look at guild brawl engagement, when we look at tournament involvement, there's a time-sensitive team submission. Usually within the game, there's a 2-minute window for you to submit your team. Within a tournament or a guild brawl, there's a 48-hour window, maybe more, maybe a little less. The unique challenge of dropping a tactic successfully is that I can't see your team until you submit that team. There's a piece of information missing as I thoughtfully apply my tactics. And so what I'm saying is, this has already been discovered as being really difficult to implement well. Tactics. And tactics are essentially items and spells alpha. This is how the game will evolve. This is the direction we're going. This ability to see the battle mode and then augment it in some meaningful way, to attribute a blind or a true strike or a flight into a certain position that will really change your loss into victory. That's exciting. It's adding agency. It will improve the game mechanic. It will improve player adoption. It will improve the satisfaction of the experience. It will probably drive reward. It's got so many good reasons why this is exciting. But what I'm saying is, we've already seen essentially items and spells 1.0 or alpha be difficult, problematic, challenging from a technical standpoint. And then going back to the People's Guild conversation with, again, I think it was Investigator, he specifically said, we don't really know what we're going to do with items and spells or how we're going to implement that. How does one use an item or a spell logically, thoughtfully, appropriately, with maximum efficiency if you don't even see your opponent's team? And so is there a 48-hour window to submit your tactic? That is a friction point. That's a technical friction point within the execution of what land was supposed to be that's holding it back. And so whether it's the existing low player engagement and all the reasons that have led to that, whether it's the complexity and accessibility of the blockchain technology or the game itself, whether it's the economic viability and the token rewards within it, or the technical issues that are preventing the growth and improvement of any of these problems, we need to admit that land is, in some respect, at this moment, if you wouldn't use the word dead, you have to say it might die. I really think that it's a real concern in 2024. Now, does that mean I want to sell my land? Does that mean it's over? Does that mean I'm giving up? Does that mean I'm, pessimistic about the future? No. But let's be real about the difficulties in front of us. I think there are 3 considerations I want to close with here that are going to expose the positive side of the coin. The reason for hopefulness in this moment. Land is not thriving. Players are not adopting. The game mechanic is boring. The rewards are insubstantial. But unique ownership and the value proposition associated with land ownership. We've heard about things about guild brawl battles taking place in certain arenas, those arenas being positioned within your land. We've heard about being able to explore the land, the different future development and experiences that might be present within unique land assets on the blockchain has a value proposition that I am deeply excited about. And I think most people who understand blockchain and are here for that sort of future vision, that you're excited for that. You're excited for where that might go. Does it mean we'll get there? Like, do I have certainty we're going to get to that sort of promised land? Not at all. I shared with you great concerns a moment ago, but the potential seems significant, and the value proposition of unique ownership on a blockchain of land is exciting for what it could be. Secondly, innovative gameplay experiences that can be brought to you through this land. We talked about item spells. We talked about boss battles. We didn't talk about boss battles today, but you know that that's something the game has thought through. So there's unique and innovative gameplay experiences that could be brought through this. Even we've seen mage wagons as an opportunity to earn legendary summoner cards through Rebellion. There was an implication that mage wagons might be used in other ways within the future, within land maybe, and it's possible that this could be another game mechanic within land. I really think we're scratching the surface about what the game mechanic will be, but here's the problem. There's tons of potential, none of it's yet realized. So innovative gameplay is possible. I think the future is certainly interesting there. And if that comes, the value proposition of unique assets on the blockchain within the land is pretty cool. And finally, as the community within this game grows, and it's my view that it will grow, whether that conversation gets pushed forward by tokenomic appreciation, leading to excitement and exuberance to invest into it, which drives more tokenomic growth, which drives more investment. I think Aftersound calls it a life cycle, and I think that's possible. And I think that's certainly something I'm hopeful for. I think ultimately you will see more and more people come to land, because I don't think the game will give up on it. I don't think the game will fail to execute forever. I think currently they have failed, and the game project in some sense might be dead, but I really believe they can breathe life into it. I really believe they can begin to build out their vision for what they did promise, and in so doing, drive new excitement. And if that happens to coincide with player-based growth, which is associated with tokenomics or the general bull market for cryptocurrency, I think what you would ultimately see is not just a life cycle within Splinterlands the game, SPS going up, people chasing after the battle mechanic to earn the SPS, then buying cards to thrive to get the SPS, but also a life cycle within land, because the card valuation's shooting to the moon. The SPS earnings are driving higher, and so people want to be able to farm the SPS from the land. There's just so much room for financial as well as entertainment-based growth from what land is, that I don't think it's fair to say that Splinterlands Land is dead. I think if you're going to say that, you need to understand that it absolutely there can be new life breathed into it. So if it's dead, there's room for resuscitation, miraculous though it may seem in this moment. And that's where my confidence lies, that we will actually see that it's more likely it succeeds than that it finally fails. That's my view on it. What's yours? Let me know in the comments below. Have an amazing day. God bless.